Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Telescope Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Everyone in this place, if you could do a handstand, I want to see your feet up in the air right now. Wave them around, that's right. Woo!
Hello, welcome to the Telescope Podcast, the show where we look at geek culture through the spyglass of faith. Matthew Seipel Anderson here, as always, your host. Well, today I'm going to be talking about Solo. That's right. I finally got to go see Solo, and I got to tell you this little funny story. My wife went out with her two sisters for one of her sisters' birthday, little birthday celebration. And, I knew about it, knew they went out to eat, I think they went to a movie or something, but I didn't really know much about it. So anyway, a week later, we were finally getting to go see Solo. I got the child care lined up, and we go into the movie theater, and she leans over and she goes, "I've already seen this movie." But she had already seen it with her sisters, but she kept it a secret from me because she knew that I would feel bad and I maybe not want to go see it, not want to make her go see it again. So anyway, my wife is awesome. So thanks, honey, for going to see Han Solo with me, even though you've already seen it. Well, before we get into the featured content, it's time for the science segment. Well, today's science segment is not going to be as deep as some of the previous ones. Now, I got a question before I give you this story to set this whole thing up. Have you ever thought that electric cars are just too wimpy and that you could never drive one? Well, I found this story that says that in the future, electric cars may literally have space rocket boosters attached to them. Yes, it's true. Tesla CEO Elon Musk announced in a Saturday tweet that a, quote, SpaceX option package, unquote, for the forthcoming Tesla Roadster will include not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 10 small rocket thrusters arranged seamlessly around the car to improve performance. That may sound, ludicrous, and Tesla HQ has said that as a general policy, it doesn't confirm or deny the truthfulness of Musk's tweets, but some of Musk's most apparently ridiculous Twitter brainstorms have wound up being absolutely real. And recently, he said this on Twitter. SpaceX option package for the new Tesla Roadster will include 10 small rocket thrusters arranged seamlessly around car. These rocket engines dramatically improve acceleration, top speed, braking, and cornering. So, man, your car is going to be like an Iron Man suit, and it's going to be sweet. So, I don't know. I'm sold on it. It sounds amazing. So, there you go. There is your science segment, little future tech story. Talking about Han Solo. My thoughts about Han Solo are pretty simple. I loved it. Honestly, I had kind of low expectations because I had seen a few blurbs. I was trying hard not to see much online to... I don't want any spoilers. I wanted just to be able to watch the movie spoiler-free. I had seen some of the trailers, obviously, but that was it. And I wasn't listening to any other commentary on it. And so, but I had heard a couple kind of negative things. So I didn't have super high expectations going into the theater. I just decided I was going to sit there and just watch it. I wasn't going to sit there and think like a podcaster trying to get an angle or thinking about what I could talk about on the show or nitpicking or Easter egg hunting or any of that stuff. I literally just watched it and enjoyed it. And you know what? I really enjoyed it. It was like a super fun movie. And I don't have a whole lot of deep thoughts, honestly, about it. I especially loved Donald Glover's performance as Lando. He was just so smooth, captured the essence of the character, and so I loved his performance. Alden E., I'm calling him that because I don't really know how to say his last name. Anyway, the guy who played Han Solo, Alden baby. I loved his performance. He did a great job. He definitely looked the part, with the like rock star belt that with the gun like super low on his leg. He definitely had the look, which was cool. He didn't really have the same grumpy charm that Harrison Ford brought to the character, but to my mind, I think, well, at this point in his life, he is a younger, more naive version of Han Solo. And as he works in the smuggling business, he will progressively become more grumpy and more jaded and more like the Han Solo that we all grew up with. So I'm just going to give him a pass. I enjoyed his performance, thought he did a great job. And I just liked the movie overall. I liked the story. It was just very fun. And in a way, it was cool to watch this one because the tone was more light. And I wasn't stressed out about, the canon, and like The Last Jedi was kind of heavy, and so I enjoyed this, and I need to say this: if you hated this movie, maybe your inner child is a little lost, because maybe you've become too much of a critic, and I had this thought also, it might be the cost of being like a super huge fan is that, you're harder to impress. And, if you're out there and you're hating on Han Solo and you're hating on The Last Jedi, I just want to encourage you. Let go of the mega fan and just enjoy. Enjoy an escape into the stars with lasers and lightsabers and Wookiees. And you know what? You'll be a lot happier. So, one of the biggest things that people were talking about when it comes to the Solo film was the end. So, warning, spoiler alert, I'm going to give away the end of the movie right now. So, don't listen if you haven't seen it. So, the end of the movie, the big bad Dryden Voss is dead, and Kiera takes the ring off his finger, and she lets Han go, but she doesn't join him. Instead, she contacts the real big bad, the real head of the criminal gang, whose name I can't remember actually. Was it like Crimson, some kind of evil name, Crimson Dawn or something like that? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So she contacts the head of the crime gang, and who pops up in the hologram image? Dun dun dun, Darth Maul. So, whoa, everybody's shocked. Of people who don't know the extended, details of the new Star Wars canon are like, didn't he die in like 1999? Darth Maul died way back then, and they don't realize that he actually has been back to life this whole time. So, hey, if you're confused about Darth Maul, before I go any further, you can go, there's this YouTube channel called The Stupendous Wave. It's a guy who does Star Wars videos. I like his videos because they're fast moving and they give a lot of information, and they're interesting, but he doesn't do a lot of commentary. So if you want to just get some nerdy information, he makes good videos, and he's got a really good one about Darth Maul, just explaining the history of Darth Maul. But I'll give you a super quick and dirty rundown. So Darth Maul obviously was in The Phantom Menace, the first of the prequels, and he gets cut in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi and falls down one of the classic, huge, long shafts that has no railing. They seem to be everywhere in the Star Wars universe, right? These big open pits in the middle of these super technologically advanced buildings. They put this huge pit right in the middle, and these Star Wars characters always seem to fall down them. So anyway, that's what happened to Darth Maul. But apparently, Darth Maul used the Force and his intense hatred of Obi-Wan Kenobi to channel all kinds of dark side energy to save himself, and he ended up in a heap of like rubbish and got shipped off to this like rubbish planet that you get to see in the Clone War cartoons. And he built this like spidery set of legs for himself, and he lived there, and he was kind of crazy. And anyway, Eventually, he's found by his brother in the Clone Wars cartoons. His brother restores him, gives him some new legs, gets his mind all straightened out. They have some fights with the Jedi. They attack Obi-Wan Kenobi. They become powerful among organized crime gangs. At one point, they get schooled by the Emperor, who sees them as rivals because they're sort of this second little faction of Sith warriors. Oh, by the way, Darth Maul's brother, whose name I can't remember, that's okay, was an apprentice of Count Dooku. So, just throwing that in, little extra bonus for you. So anyway, he gets schooled by the Emperor. The Emperor kills his brother, but Darth Maul lives, and he continues his career as a master of organized crime. And then he appears again in the Rebels cartoons, which I haven't watched all those, but I try to keep up with them a little bit just by listening to other people talk about them. So in that series, Darth Maul appears. He tries to seduce the young Ezra, who's trying to learn how to become a Jedi. And eventually he tracks down Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi kills him again. So, being that the Solo movie happens during that, post-Clone War, right before Rebels time period, it does make sense that Darth Maul was alive and that he would be involved in organized crime. So, I don't know. I mean, will he appear in other projects? It would be cool. I wouldn't be opposed to it. He's a cool character. He looks pretty gnarly. The hardcore fans all know the story that I just gave you, so it'll be cool. I don't know. I won't make a prediction on it, but people are arguing whether Darth Maul was a good idea. Does he fit? Is it too confusing? Well, here's what I think, and this is going to be a little segues, and I'm going to take a sip of my tea. It's like 11:30, so I need a little refreshment here to keep me going. So here's what I think. I think these Star Wars story movies, and if you know Star Wars, you know that there's the main films that are following the Skywalker family saga, the Skywalker family drama, and then you got the spin-off Star Wars stories like Rogue One and Han Solo. I think that the Star Wars stories should each be a season in a Netflix-style TV series. Now, I should say, there is a Star Wars live-action TV show in the works, apparently. I've heard, I've read. Don't know any details about it, so, don't hold your breath. These things could always end up being canceled. But I think these Star Wars stories would be so cool to make into seasons of a show instead of trying to tell a side story in a 2-hour movie. Okay, think about this. Imagine these different story arcs that you could expand into like 1 to 3 episodes each, okay? The first one, Han on the slave planet. You've got that really crazy bug lady who lives in the water who can't handle sunlight, Lady Proxima, as the big bad during that story arc. And you have the relationship between Han and Kira being built, and so you could have a whole thing, and then ending with their escape would be like the climax of that arc. And then the next one would be Han in the army, while Kira ends up still having to struggle for survival back on that home planet, and she ends up with the crime gang and with Voss. That would make a cool story arc. The next one, Han with the gang, plotting the heist. He ends up with the gang at the end of the army arc. And Kira, in the meantime, is going deeper into her world of crime, right? And more fully, becoming part of that. Like, her character is changing. And then the next one would be like the big heist, where Han and Kira are reunited, and Han meets Voss, and they plan the heist and they do it and all that thing. And then the finale is the Kessel Run and the big showdown at the end between Han and Voss and all these other characters, and all kind of culminates. And that would make a super cool show, right? You could do that in like 10 episodes or 12 episodes, and I think it'd be so cool. I mean, you've got all these amazing characters, all these colorful characters, And why not use them more than just having a 2-hour movie? I don't know. I was thinking the same thing with Rogue One, right? Rogue One especially has some cool character interactions. And what I like about Rogue One, as far as if you made it into a show, is you've got the broader political things happening between all these different factions, right? For example, let's start with on a smaller scale. You've got the relationship between the Urso family and Orson Krennic and Tarkin, right? Because back when Galen Erso was just a scientist, and he was buddies with Orson Krennic, and Krennic's this super ambitious guy within the Empire, and then obviously Tarkin is part of that, and there was a relationship there, a prior relationship, so that would be interesting, an interesting couple of episodes or something. And then you've got the aspect of the rebellion, right, trying to put together this loose coalition of people to fight the Empire, and then all the problems being created by Saw Gerrera. That would be cool. It'd make a really great show. And then, as the thing progresses, right, and Galen Erso is taken by force and forced to work on the Death Star, and Jyn is with Saw Gerrera under his care, you've got the dynamic of, Galen is working for the Empire, which he despises, and he's knowing that the Empire is being troubled by Saw Gerrera, and he's like one of their most wanted people probably, and it's going to just drive him crazy because he knows his baby's down there with Saw, and he's up there working for the evil Empire, and it'd be so cool. And you can just imagine all these different. You can just see how it could be a great show. And there's all these great characters. You've got Cassian, who was a child soldier. You could do some flashbacks. You've got Mon Mothma and Senator Bail Organa and Admiral Raddus, the alien general, right? Who's the same species as a guy who was like, it's a trap in Return of the Jedi. I don't think it's the same guy, though. I don't know. And then you've got General Draven, who was the guy who wanted Cassian to kill Galen. Just so much. There's so much. It'd make a great thing. So, I don't know. I would like to know what you guys would think. Now, I don't think they should go making Rogue One into a show now. I mean, now they've done it. So, it's not going to happen. I'm just saying for future Star Wars stories, I think that would be the way to go. I would prefer that to more spin-off movies, personally. Oh, and one more thing. I want to know more about Borg Gullet, that crazy alien in Rogue One, right? If they did a show about it, that would be like a whole episode, Borg Gullet. Or maybe it would be like a reoccurring thing, I don't know. All right, well, those are my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts about the whole idea of doing these stories as TV shows, and love to hear your thoughts about Solo. Did you love it? Did you hate it? With that, it's time to
bring forth the telescope.
That's right. This is the show where we look at geek culture through the spyglass of faith. There's a line in the Han Solo movie where Kira looks at Han and says, Han, you're the good guy. And that made me think, we live in a world where moral choices are real. They're a dimension of reality that we experience because of our sentience. We're made in God's image and know right and wrong. Non-sentient forms of life, they're on a lower level and don't experience this dimension of reality. But it's a real dimension that we have to grapple with every day. And in the Star Wars world, right and wrong, good and evil, light and dark, it's a big part of the Star Wars fabric. And I think that's why it resonates with us, because we are always grappling with issues of morality. It's part of our life. And oftentimes, we're grappling with right and wrong within ourselves, because we need to make moral choices every single day. And, I was looking, this morning I preached a message at our church. It's a Sunday night as I record this. And it's kind of an interesting message where throughout the Bible there's these different stories starting in Genesis and going all the way into, the book of Acts and beyond probably. But I found these like 5 stories where there were 2 angels. And as I strung these stories together, it forms a picture of a typical story arc of walking with God. Okay, so let me explain. I'm kind of getting out there, but I'm going to bring it all around. So the first part, our innocence dies. As we grow up, we learn about the world. We learn that people aren't always who they say they are. We make some choices that, maybe go against our conscience, and our innocence dies. And in the Bible, you had 2 angels at the Garden of Eden when God expelled Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden and made that first animal sacrifice and clothed them with skins, a picture of redemption and a picture of Jesus to come. But their innocence died. And then the second story is these 2 angels going down to Sodom to save Lot, but to bring God's judgment on a completely depraved society. So that's like the second phase. And I was thinking that's almost like the disgusting junior high pimply phase, right? Where just like kids in junior high, they're nasty, right? They're awkward for one, and I love them. I love students. But I did youth ministry for a long time, and strangely enough, I'm finding myself doing it again. But so I love students. But junior high, like boys especially. Like I remember taking them to camp, and you had to like tell them, you will shower this week because otherwise you'll stink, and I don't want to be around you being all stinky. So anyway, yeah, it's just kind of funny to think about, but it's that depravity, right? Like you go deeper into sin, you go deeper into worldly things. Now, the next story is 2 angels made of gold on the Ark of the Covenant, right? So these are not literal angels, although they are symbolic of literal angels that are around the actual throne of God. But I see this story as representing, during this time in our life, seeing God as distant, of seeing God as religious. At that time in the history of God's relationship with mankind, the presence of God was on that ark, and it was not accessible to average people. So only the high priest could go in there one time a year and sprinkle blood. Again, highly symbolic and prophetic of what God was going to do to come through Jesus Christ. But, God was distant, it was religious, and impersonal, very impersonal. Now, the next story is when Jesus, his body was laid in the tomb. And if you know anything about first century tombs, especially fancy ones like Jesus was laid in, they were hollowed out caves, and they would carve like a bench in there, and then they would lay the body on that rock bench, so to speak, that rock ledge, it was basically, and they would leave it in there for like a year and let it decompose, and then the family would come back, and sometimes they would do they'd wash the bones, I guess. That's what I read. And then they would put the bones in a bone box, I guess it's sort of like an urn today, and then they could reuse the tomb because, if you're going to take all the trouble to carve out a cave to use as a tomb, you don't want it to be a one-time thing. So how this plays in is, at this point, the disciples' eyes were really open. They showed up at the empty tomb, and there was 2 angels in that tomb, one where Jesus' head would have been and one where his feet would have been. And this is also a picture of the Ark of the Covenant. There was that stone table that had blood on it from Jesus' body being laid there. And the blood was on the ark, but it was the blood of the spotless lamb, the Messiah. And there's the angels, and it's given them a picture. And now he's risen. And now there's a shift, and their eyes are open, and there's a shift, in the spirit, and there's a new relationship with God. There's a new openness, right? The Holy of Holies, where the ark was kept, that the veil or the curtain that separated people from that place was torn supernaturally, the Bible says. And so there was a new access to God that had never been there before. And the last example I used was there were 2 angels when Jesus ascends. Jesus appears to the disciples, encourages them, gives them proofs that he is alive. And then He gives them some final instructions to go and wait for the Holy Spirit, and then they're going to be sent out to do the work of the ministry. And he ascends, and then there's these two angels that appear, and they say, hey guys, why are you looking up into heaven? Jesus is going to come back out of heaven someday, but you guys have work to do, and you have a command to follow, and you have a commission to follow and to carry out. And so, that final stage is purpose, that God breathes some purpose into our life. So our innocence dies. We find ourselves in depravity. God is distant, but then our eyes are opened, and we're redeemed, and the Lord puts a purpose in our heart. So that's kind of, from my message this morning, I know I strayed a little bit from my original Han Solo quote, but it's cool to see the Star Wars world and how good and evil play such a part. Good and evil are a part of our everyday life that we have to reckon with, but ultimately, the only way to really know good and evil is to learn it from God, because God is good, and when you stand in the light, you can see the difference between right, wrong, good, evil, and you can never be good on your own. It's all about having Christ make you good by his blood. So there you go. There is the telescope for today. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I hope I didn't get too preachy, although I can't really apologize that much. It's kind of the purpose of this show, is to get a little bit preachy and have some fun talking about nerdy stuff. So, hey, if you like this show, please subscribe to it. You won't miss an episode that way. It will help me out. So whether you're in Apple Podcast, you got the podcast app on your iPhone. I started using the app Overdrive. I just like the interface quite a bit. But the show's also on Spotify, so you can go there. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm not really a proper YouTuber, but I do upload the episodes of the podcast and, my music stuff. So if you subscribe on YouTube, you'll get notifications. If you hit the little bell, you'll get notifications when a new podcast episode comes up. So I'm in Google Play, all over the place. So, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube. It's got to be 11:30 by now. So anyway, subscribe to the show, because I want you to hear it and be part of this conversation. I make these for you because I love you. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Matthew Seipel Anderson. I'm going to go to bed. Out of here.
What's up, everybody? Everyone in this place, if you could do a handstand, I want to see your feet up in the air right now. Wave them around, that's right. Woo!
Thank you for listening.